Welcome back to another story. I hope you enjoy it. If you do, comment your favorite part. In a small, sleepy village nestled between the rolling hills and vast meadows, there lived a boy named Alden. From the time he could walk, Alden had always been fascinated by dragons. His grandfather would sit by the hearth and regale him with tales of majestic beasts soaring through the skies, their wings as wide as the horizon, their scales gleaming like polished jewels in the sunlight. But as Alden grew, it became apparent that dragons were no longer common in the world. Stories of them were spoken as if they were fading myths, their kind vanishing into legend. Every evening, Alden would climb to the highest hill just outside his village, a place he called Dragon's Watch, hoping to spot one. His friends laughed and the villagers teased him for his wild dreams, but Alden remained undeterred. He was sure that if he waited long enough, a dragon would come for him. After all, every dragon had a rider once, and Alden believed with all his heart that he was destined to be one of them. Years passed, and while Alden's hope never wavered, his heart grew heavy with the burden of disappointment. He was older now, no longer the wide-eyed child who eagerly awaited the sight of wings against the sky, but still every evening he climbed that same hill, dreaming of dragons. One late autumn day, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned shades of crimson and violet, something changed. Alden heard a sound, faint, like the low rumble of thunder, but not quite. It was more grumbling. Curious, Alden followed the sound, his heart racing. He clambered over a ridge and came upon the sight he had never expected to see in his wildest dreams. There, sprawled lazily on a patch of dry grass, was a dragon. But this was not the grand, regal beast Alden had imagined. No, this dragon was old, very old. His scales were dull, cracked in places, and his wings drooped wearily at his sides. His eyes, though fierce, were clouded with the weight of many years. And he looked grumpy, exceedingly so. His large snout was scrunched in irritation, and every few moments he would let out a huff that sent a small puff of smoke spiraling from his nostrils. Alden's mouth fell open, speechless. A dragon! After all this time, a dragon? The dragon lifted one weary eye and fixed Alden with a look of deep displeasure.
"What are you staring at, boy?"
Came a deep, gravelly voice.
"Haven't you ever seen an ancient dragon before?"
Alden blinked, stumbling over his words. I've never seen a dragon at all, sir."
"Humph."
The dragon shifted, letting out a groan as his joints popped.
"Well, congratulations. Now go away."
But, Alden hesitated, I've always wanted to meet a dragon.
"Is that so?
The dragon's voice was dripping with sarcasm.
And what would you do with a dragon if you found one?"
Alden straightened, his heart pounding in his chest. "I'd learn from you. I'd be your rider. We could fly across the skies just like in the old stories." The dragon barked out a laugh, though it sounded more like a cough.
"A rider, eh? You're about 100 years too late for that, boy. My rider passed on long ago, and I'm not looking for a replacement. Besides, I'm retired."
"Retired?" Alden asked, his brow furrowing. "But dragons don't retire."
"This one does."
The dragon grumbled, closing his eyes.
"Now leave me be. Go chase your foolish dreams elsewhere."
But Alden was not easily discouraged. For days he returned to the same spot, bringing food, telling stories, and asking questions about the dragon's past. The dragon, whose name was Thrax, remained irritable and unamused, often swatting the air with his tail or huffing in frustration. But slowly something shifted. Despite his grumpiness, Thrax found himself intrigued by the boy's persistence. He began answering Alden's questions, albeit with a gruff demeanor. He told Alden of his rider, an old knight named Sero, who had died many decades ago. Thrax had roamed the skies aimlessly after Sero's death, until the weight of time finally pressed down on him. Now he preferred the peace and quiet of solitude, far from the battles and glories of the past. But Alden's curiosity was infectious, and soon Thrax found himself reminiscing about days long gone. The boy had a spark in him, something Thrax hadn't seen in a long, long time. And though he would never admit it, the dragon began to enjoy their daily talks. One afternoon, Alden brought up the subject of flying again.
Fly.
Thrax snorted.
Do you see these wings, boy? They're as brittle as old parchment. I'd fall out of the sky like a stone.
But you're a dragon, Alden insisted. Surely you could teach me something. Thrax grumbled, eyeing Alden suspiciously.
Fine,
He muttered.
I'll teach you something.
With great effort, the dragon lifted his massive head and peered down at the boy.
Lesson 1.
He began.
Dragons don't need to fly to be majestic. We already are majestic.
Alden stifled a laugh, but the dragon's eyes twinkled ever so slightly.
Lesson 2.
Thrax continued.
Humans are much too fond of heroics. Sometimes it's better to stay on the ground and keep your scales intact.
Alden nodded solemnly, though he couldn't suppress the grin spreading across his face.
And lesson 3.
Thrax finished, his voice softening.
Even the mighty of us must one day return to the earth.
As the weeks passed, Alden and Thrax grew closer. The dragon, though still cantankerous, began to show a softer side. He would let Alden rest against his warm scales, and sometimes, only sometimes, he would crack a dry joke that made Alden laugh out loud. But as winter approached, Thrax's strength began to fade. He slept more often, and his once powerful body seemed to grow frailer by the day. Alden knew deep down that his time with the dragon was drawing to a close. One crisp morning, Alden found Thrax lying in the meadow, his breathing slow and labored. The dragon's eyes flickered open, and he gave the boy a weary smile.
It's time, boy.
Thrax rasped.
I've lived long enough, longer than most, but now I must go.
Alden's heart ached. No, Thrax, you can't leave. I still have so much to learn from you. Thrax chuckled softly, though it was more of a wheeze.
You've learned more than you think, Alden. You've got the heart of a rider, and one day you'll have your own dragon to fly with.
Alden shook his head, tears welling in his eyes. I don't want another dragon. I want you. Thrax's gaze softened, and he reached out with one claw, gently resting it on Alden's shoulder.
Life moves in circles, boy. I'm leaving, yes, but I'm not leaving you alone.
With a final, tired breath, Thrax closed his eyes, his body still and quiet. Alden sat by his side for a long time, his heart heavy with grief. It wasn't until the next morning, when Alden returned to Dragon's Watch, that he saw them. 2 large, gleaming eggs nestled in the spot where Thrax had once lain. Thrax was gone, but his legacy lived on, and as Alden touched the smooth surface of the eggs, he smiled through his tears. One day, these dragons would hatch, and when they did, Alden would be ready. He would teach them the lessons he had learned from Thrax, the lessons of patience, persistence, and the beauty of friendship. In the distance, a faint breeze stirred the air, and for a moment, Alden swore he heard the echo of Thrax's grumpy voice on the wind.
Take care of those eggs, boy, and remember, dragons don't retire.
With a laugh, Alden nodded, knowing that wherever Thrax was now, he was watching over him, grumpy as ever.